Had you told me a year ago that I'd be doing this tutorial, I would have laughed. With artists such as Bad Bunny and Karol G dominating the airwaves, it's no secret that reggaeton has taken the world by storm. I've recently started coming around to respecting it, even appreciating it, and this is in large part due to the aforementioned artists starting to incorporate genres such as salsa or merengue into their music. I used to think all reggaeton sounded the same, but now I'm starting to realize that that's not the case. While reggaeton drums may sound easy to do, I have a few tips and tricks for you, so stick around. In this video, I'll be discussing how to put together a reggaeton drum part in Ableton Live. So without further ado, let's head on over to our DAW. So the first thing we need to do here in Ableton is get our sound palette. We're only going to be worried about the sounds at this time. We're not going to be worried about the actual programming. So I'm going to start with a bass drum, and I actually want two bass drums. I want a boomy sounding bass drum and a punchy sounding bass drum. So let's start with the punchy one. 2 hours later. All right, so I am not in love with it, but I think this is a good enough sample. So we have our punchy bass drum. Now we gotta find a boomy bass drum. 17.5 hours later. So I'm pretty happy with what I have here. Here's our boomy bass drum. So together it sounds like this. Let's move on to our snare drums. In reggaeton music, I think there are two kind of snare drum sounds we should be after. There is a natural sounding, kind of Jamaican sounding snare drum, and then there's kind of a very synthetic, unnatural sounding snare drum, which is a very short sound with not a lot of reverb, very crunchy sounding, a lot of mid-range on the frequency spectrum. It does not sound natural, but that's kind of what makes it sound cool. So I've kind of cheated here. I already have a few sounds that I like saved. So actually, let's reverse those. So we have that, and actually a quick trick, we can kind of do that. It's too much. So that's a really good sound for like if you want to do like a drum roll, to take that kind of that tail off. Just kind of makes it sound unexpected. And it's really just given more depth to our snare sound. Let's go on to the unnatural snare drum. I like to layer 3 different. So this is kind of our basis. Nice, quick sound. Layer it with that. And then this is the last component. It's almost like a white noise. So the 3 of them together. And then obviously we kind of want to mix those sounds to our taste. Let's talk a little bit about the Dembow Rhythm. This is the mother rhythm of reggaeton music. I think you know how it goes by now. Do-ga. So it originally comes from the song Dembow by Shabba Ranks, released in 1990. I'm sure he wasn't the first one to use it, but that seems to be who people point to when talking about the birth of reggaeton music. I would say the key to writing a good reggaeton drum part is staying true to this Dembow rhythm while coming up with interesting and creative variations. All right, so now comes the fun part, which is putting everything together. I did add a hi-hat to our sound palette, and basically what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be making two different beats. So I'm going to call the first one the A beat and the second one the B beat. The A beat is going to be kind of our typical Dembow rhythm with not really a whole lot of variation, while the B part is going to be a tad more interesting, a tad more varied. Let's just go here. We're going to do a 4 measure pattern, and I'm just going to draw in the bass drum, and we're just going to use the punchy one, if you will. And I probably could have done Control D there, but whatever. Now I'm going to add in the snare drum. So this is our natural sounding snare drum. And this time I am going to do Control D just to save some time. That's what we have so far. Let's add in just a quick little, whatchamacallit. There we go. That's a fill halfway through. And then we can, how about we do this? We'll keep the bass drum in there. And then we'll repeat that, but take out, there we go. All right, so I'm not liking how it sounds with that. Let's leave it like this. And yeah, so this is kind of our beat A, we're going to call this. So that's kind of the boring Dembow pattern. And now we're going to change it up a little bit. So I'm going to call this one the beat B. We can make it a different color just to show. All right, so now I'm going to add in that boomy bass drum on beats 1 and 3. And then this guy, we're going to change it up to that. And basically just draw all these in. All right, and then I'm also going to do a simple hi-hat part here. Okay, so, and then don't be afraid to change up the velocity on these hi-hat parts. So maybe make that a little louder. Just to make it a little more interesting. So I'm just doing the main beats. Again, doesn't have to be anything fancy. All right, so now we have our 2 different beats, which are going to be used in conjunction with each other. What I kind of hear a lot of producers doing is something like this. So here's what it sounds like. Okay, so it kind of just does that over and over again. I did forget to put this extra snare drum in there, but it's kind of optional. You can't even really hear the difference. It's a very subtle addition. All right, so there you have it. Alright, so it can be really easy to fall into this trap of, well, all reggaeton drums sound the same, let's just go do-ga-do-ga-do-ga-do-ga and call it a day. I don't think it's as easy as that anymore. We have to vary it up to make it more interesting to listen to. Don't be afraid to experiment with auxiliary percussion or bongos or congas or timbales. You can also add and subtract parts of your drum beat at unexpected parts in the song. So maybe drop out the bass drum completely when the listener is least expecting it. We can experiment with effects such as flangers and filters. Also, drum fills, when used sparingly, can be very effective. We can incorporate EDM-like builds, so very something like that. At its core, programming drums for reggaeton is pretty straightforward and, dare I say, easy. But the challenge comes in coming up with new parts that are creative and unique and no one's really heard before. Alright, thank you for being here if you've made it this far. If you got value out of this video, please consider subscribing and have a great day.